Hey there, it's Rick Probst, and you are listening to Faith Talk today, and we're having a great weekend. My next guest is a great guest. He's the founder and president of the Ezra Institute for Contemporary Christianity and the host of Think Christianly. It's heard Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on Faith Talk Atlanta, 590 WDWD. It's Dr. Joe Boot. Doc, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me on the show. Great to be with you.
Thanks for connecting with us today and also being a part of the Salem family. For those that maybe don't know you, Doc, let's talk a little bit about you, the Ezra Institute, the radio show, the book that you have out, Think Christianly. Tell us a little bit about the Ezra Institute.
Well, the Ezra Institute was founded actually in Canada. In 2009, I was pastoring a church in Toronto at the time. Ezra is a Christian world and life view think tank and training organization. We're trying to help believers think and thinkers believe. We're trying to encourage people to develop a full-orbed Christian world and life view, to think scripturally about all of the critical issues facing us in our culture today. That's really what Ezra's all about.
And the show, how did you decide, hey, maybe we should take this message a little bit broader, at least as far as the broadcast industry? How'd that all happen?
Actually, we were finding that our podcast was growing significantly on various platforms, and a friend of the ministry, who's quite a creative business guy, said, "Look, there is so much rich content here. This would be suitable for a radio. Have you thought about really getting onto this content, this podcast, onto the radio?" So we thought about how to rework it and divide it up into three elements to make it suitable for radio consumption. And a donor generously came forward and said they'd fund the pilot. So that's what we're doing right now. We're trying it out. We're seeing how the audience respond and seeing if we can make a go of it. And of course, with the different medium through which people listen today, I mean, every man and his dog seems to have a podcast now, but not everybody is on the radio. So, we thought that might be interesting.
I hear that all the time. Hey, you should have a podcast. Yes, there are, who knows, millions of folks having a podcast. Well, let's talk just a little bit about yours, your show and the podcast. What have you heard so far about either?
Well, the podcast has been going for a number of years, has a great reception, and we've got a good listener base across in the US and in the UK and Australia. And we're only a few weeks into the radio show, and so far we're getting a very encouraging feedback. So, as you guys know better than me, it takes time to establish a regular radio audience. But we're encouraged so far by the feedback that we're receiving. It takes a little bit of technical work to divide up an hour-long, just over podcast into three parts. But we've basically, in a sense, reformatted our podcast to fit for radio, and we think it's improved our podcast too. So, I'm encouraged, and that the Think Christianly is the title because it's based on my latest book. Think Christianly, Developing an Undivided Mind. The podcast focuses on thinking Christianly about various issues, and so that's what the radio show is about. I'm on it pretty much every week unless I'm on vacation.
I do want to talk about the book in just a few. Let's talk about this. Let me reset for just a second. We're talking with Dr. Joe Boot. He's the host of Think Christianly. You hear that here at Faith Talk Atlanta, 8 a.m. on 590 WDWD. You can find out more about him at EzraInstitute.com. And he did mention just seconds ago about the podcast. Are there questions, Doc, that you get asked constantly? Are there like the top? Let's just take one since we have a short time here. But what's on the minds of those that connect with you, whether they text you, email, one-on-one with you? They're saying, Dr. Boot, I've just got to know the answer to this question. What is that question?
That's a very good question. There are a few, but they all surround really the crisis of culture, the collapse of what I would call the Christian paradigm, the plausibility structure of the Christian faith within the Western world. So identity is a huge issue, identity and sexuality.
Yeah.
Law is a massive issue, law and politics. Islam is a hugely growing concern among people in the West and listeners to our podcast. Those would be some of the relationship of the church and the state. What is the role of government? These are the kinds of questions now that people really want to hear from us on.
I know you talk a lot about Christian or biblical worldview, and we've heard that a lot over the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years, I guess, but a lot lately. Define that, if you will, your definition of biblical worldview, and how we should operate, walk, live that.
Well, I think it's best illustrated by drawing a distinction between knowing merely Bible stories or even Christian doctrine, and then actually understanding the structural features of the biblical account of reality. So I think for a long time, Christians in many contexts have known Bible stories. And in others, in some, we've had a reasonable grasp on basic Christian doctrines, but they've remained sort of discrete ideas, discrete things to confess. But it very often, the structure of Scripture, the story of redemption, creation, fall, redemption, consummation in and through the Lord Jesus Christ. I would call that the arc of the biblical worldview: creation, fall, redemption, consummation. We have often not thought about every aspect of life in terms of that biblical paradigm. And that's meant that some of the critical questions about identity, sexuality, life, beginning and end of life issues, law, politics, and so forth, they've remained sort of separate bits and pieces. And people thought, well, I'm not really interested in that. That's not really my thing.
Right.
They haven't seen the Christian view of reality as a cohesive whole that can be and should be applied to every single area of life. That the Bible is a book for the totality of life, that we need to develop a Christian philosophy of life in totality, not just know isolated Christian doctrines or be aware of Bible stories.
And you also talk about the division between sacred and secular, which goes hand in hand, right?
100%. So that would be
Yeah.
one of the critical distinctives, really, of Ezra. We're trying to, a lot of Christians have tended to think of the world in terms of a double-decker bus, two-story view of reality. On the upper deck, you've got so-called spiritual life, where they put Christianity, Bible reading, evangelism, prayer, and the life of the church. That's considered the really important stuff. Then on the lower deck, you've got marriage, education, law, politics, science, the arts, culture, and that's considered the lower deck, less important, not really concerned with truly spiritual things. We think that is a unbiblical false dichotomy, that the distinction between a so-called sacred secular realm needs to be shattered and broken down altogether. No such distinction exists in the Bible. There's the holy and the profane, but that is not a secular sacred distinction. That's been the tool of secularism, the secular sacred distinction, to say, well, you need to privatize your faith. Because only the worldview of secularism, actually the religious view, the religious secularism, that's neutral. Everything else is a biased faith perspective. And so you need to keep, that's purely sacred, that's private, that's for the private space, for between your ears. It's not for the public space. And that's helped push Christianity to the periphery. And really now to the point where, the states are even trying to regulate what we think and what we speak and what we say in terms of their new worldview. That's been catastrophic, I think, for Christianity. The sacred secular divide needs to be broken down.
You're listening to and watching, if you're viewing, Dr. Boot, Dr. Joe Boot, who is the host of Think Christianly. You hear that here at Faith Talk Atlanta, 590 WDWD 8 a.m. He's also the president and founder of the Ezra Institute for Contemporary Christianity. A couple of minutes yet, Doc, and we've got to go. You're a wonderful guest. I've got to have you back, and I know you're busy, and we want to influence folks to watch the show, listen to the radio show, and watch the stuff that you have on your website, and also read the book. Real quick about the book. The book is recent, right? About a year or so?
Yes, sir. Came out at the end of last year.
Yeah.
And it is basically 12 chapters confronting, I would say, 12 of the biggest issues confronting Christians today. It's called Think Christianly, Developing an Undivided Mind. That is to say that I think for many Christians, we've almost become schizophrenic in our thinking. We're part Christian, part humanist, part biblical, part secular in our thinking. And the book's about how we develop a truly biblical mind, be transformed, Paul says, by the renewal of our minds in Romans 12. And really, that's what we're committed to. That's the way transformation of the mind, transform people, transform cultures.
Hey, this is good stuff. I want to encourage you to get the book and yes, listen to the show and check out the website with Dr. Boot. Love to have you back, Doc, because there's so many. We didn't even scratch the surface about what I really wanted to talk about. Time just flies. You can go to EzraInstitute.com. Of course, you can go to faithtalkatlanta.com to find out more about Think Christianly. That is the radio show, 8 a.m., Faith Talk Atlanta, 590 WDWD. Doc, thank you so much, and hope to talk to you soon.
It's been a pleasure to be on the show, Rick. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking to you again and digging into some of these subjects. Thank you for making people aware of what we're up to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. What a great guest. You've got to check out the show and, hey, get the book. And, for some, this may be just a whole new concept. Wait a minute. I don't know what to do. It's making my head hurt. Well, check it out. Watch the show, listen to the show, and read the book, Dr. Joe Boot, Think Christianly. Well, we've got another great guest coming up next weekend on Faith Talk Atlanta. Join us. Have a great week. I'm Rick Probst. I'll see you then.